a picture of a skeleton on it and like a date on the back, and she told us to come up with a story, and I tried to, and this is what I got. And I know my name looks Russian, and my story is about these two communist Russians digging up like a skeleton, but I'm not Russian. Right? Or a communist. Okay. The story's called 1924. I don't know why. Alright. I'll be reading this whole thing in a Russian accent. So if it gets like confusing, sorry. Right, today, August 7th, 1924, marks a year since we first arrived in Ethiopia's Afar depression. That is in Africa, by the way. We have overturned many rocks and dug up much dirt in hopes of discovering remains of some earliest peoples. But we have yet to come across anything more than an arrowhead or a cutting stone. Our supplies are running low, and I doubt we'll be able to convince the university back in Russia to fund another trip, unless we come back with substantial findings. Besides, Comrade Stalin will likely shoot us if we return empty-handed one more time. Hope is another thing we are running low on. Long gone is the spark which we first came with, but I try to keep from despair. Every night I go to sleep thinking that tomorrow will be the day when we find what we came for. The next day, I trekked a little deeper into the basin with Comrade Yuri, who was my best excavator. Yuri had pleaded before days to check out the area out, but I first refused because it was just outside the digging boundaries the university had negotiated with the Ethiopians. But I was desperate at this point. Besides, the Ethiopians had not given us a specific warning to what would happen if we overstepped the boundaries. So I figured it couldn't be anything worse than a mere slap on the wrist. We arrived at the deep red cliff when Yuri stopped abruptly. Here, I have a feeling something is here. Yuri had a sixth sense about these things, so I knew he was definitely onto something. But the spot he chose gave me a troubled feeling. The setting sun rays hit the cliffs at an angle which made it look as if they were dripping with blood. Nevertheless, we started chipping away at the ground. You know, we're not allowed to be doing this here, I told him as my pickaxe smashed through some rocks. Well, what in the hell are we supposed to do at this point? We've nearly cleared the upper basin and haven't found any more than 2 arrowheads. There is obviously peoples that have lived here, but we have not hit the right spot yet, he replied. Perhaps you are right. They really didn't say why we weren't allowed to dig here. Suddenly, I just struck something softer than the average rock. Look, check this out, comrade. My anticipation exploded like gas tank lit on fire. I dug horizontally, and sure enough, I began to make out a slender white object protruding upward. Jackpot! Yuri and I shouted at once. Great joy filled my heart as Yuri began to brush dirt off the spot, revealing more and more bones up to the point where we had a near complete skeleton. I felt relieved I had not completely wasted a year of my life, and that I would not be shot on the return trip. I knew digging here was bound to pay off, my comrade jubilantly proclaimed. Suddenly, I had a soft thump and Yuri fell face first into the shallow pit he had dug. I barely got a glimpse of the tranquilizer round sticking out of his neck as I felt another one graze my shoulder. I drove behind a cliff and sprinted like a madman as fat darts zoomed by my head and struck the cliffs. Once I was sure I had evaded the sniper, I went back up to the cliff to get a view of the basin, only to see what looked like a group of ragged militiamen drag my comrade and the skeleton into the bordering jungle. What just happened to me was not unheard of. Stories of archaeological digs being plundered were not new. Since many of the sites were located in poor countries, groups of bandits formed who would steal priceless artifacts and specimens, and they'll sell them for much money to private collectors on the black market. All this truly infuriated me, especially considering how close we had come. But at that point I needed to focus on getting back to the camp and finding a way to free Yuri, who was now hostage. The camp I returned to was not the same one I had left. Everything was either smashed, ripped, or cut. I saw footprints in all directions, and it looked as if the crew had gotten away alive, although they were nowhere to be found at the moment. Pathetic cowards, I thought as I tried to come up with a solution. I had two options at this point. Either I could go back to Russia and try to negotiate some sort of rescue mission, which would probably get me shot. Or I could head first into the jungle and try to recover Yuri and the skeleton myself. Either way, I was going to face bullets, but I'd rather take them from bandits than comrades, so I decided to go with the latter. Luckily, the bandits had not found our cache of dynamite, which we kept in case we ever needed to clear a path through the cliffs. I filled my pack with all the dynamite it could hold, and headed back down the basin to where I could see a jungle path was clear. Once I entered the thick brush, I did not have to go far to find their hideout, which was a mere cabin covered in leaves and grass to help conceal it. A guard with a machine gun was standing outside, but he didn't notice me as I ducked behind a bush when he turned my way. As I pondered how I could get past the guard, I noticed that I was crouching near a giant tree with branches extending over the cabin's rooftop. I began to climb slowly, but surely I made my way up the trunk and across a thick branch over to the cabin, passing over the guard's head and cautiously lowering myself onto the cabin rooftop without being noticed. I pressed near to the mossy green roof, and I heard the bandit yelling in Ethiopian, which I could not understand. My heart rose upon hearing a familiar voice reply to the bandit with a sharp, "Go to hell!" I headed over to the other side of the cabin, where the chimney was, and I took out the smallest dynamite stick. My plan was what you would call a long shot, and it seemed downright stupid, but I lit the fuse, and I dropped it down the chimney. Running back to the other end of the roof, I heard confused voices, which were followed by a tremendous explosion that ripped through the cabin, killing the two bandits inside and sending the one outside running like a scared kitten. Then I turned down the new hole. I turned and I jumped down through the new hole I had just made in the roof, only to find myself staring down the barrel of an automatic weapon as soon as I landed. I closed my eyes, expecting never to have to open them again, when I heard a sound like a dull smack. When I opened my eyes, the bandit was lying unconscious in a crumpled heap. Behind him was Yuri, clutching what looked like a dirty old bone. "Nice of you to drop in, comrade," he said, as if nothing had happened. "Quite an entrance you made there." I gave him a gaping look and asked what exactly had just happened. They were asking me how they could sell each bone and made me examine them. I guess this guy kind of forgot about me after you blew up half the cabin. I gave a weak smile and we headed back to the camp with the skeleton, leaving the smoldering cabin behind us. We made our way back to the camp, where the cowards had reassembled and given us a hero's welcome. We would return to the motherland, not just with what we came for, but with a feeling that we had truly earned it.